Hello, Linda. Welcome to the Your Turn podcast. Today, we're going to talk about coaching, why it is important, and it's the first in a series of three. And every session, we're going to go a bit deeper into what is coaching, coaching for sales leaders, coaching for individual contributors. So, in this session, we'll talk about why is coaching important and what it is. And let us briefly introduce yourself, Linda. Why are you the right person to talk about coaching?
Okay, thank you so much, Cedric, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Okay, so should I start from that question, why I'm the right person to talk about this topic? I mean, there
Exactly,
are a
exactly.
million coaches outside there. The reason probably why you invited me is because we know each other, you experienced my coaching, and you know it works. And the other reason is that I'm qualified to talk about it. I did years ago a master's in executive coaching, and I've since I started working for Indeed, acquired a lot of experience working with so many leaders, coaching hundreds of leaders. I've counted them the other day, and the number was 119 leaders at Indeed, plus, I mean, some others outside. Very passionate about leadership development. I read and learn as much as I can on the topic, but the best teachers are my coaching clients. And that's also where I'm going to kind of draw my wisdom from today and
Okay,
share it with your audience.
great. And you're also pretty active on LinkedIn, so where you share articles and give your own suggestions around coaching. So feel free to follow her. We send your link into the comments later.
Sure.
So let's start about the basics. So first of all, what is coaching? And maybe also explain that it's not the same like training.
Okay. So I'm not going to give you the ICF definition of coaching because that would be a little bit boring, and you can
Hmm.
find it everywhere and on the ICF website and on ChatGPT and so many different places. What I'm going to say is that coaching is a process. So it's not necessarily kind of something that you have to become kind of master at and that only few people can do, even though, I mean, professionally, probably the more hours you have, the more competent you become, hopefully.
Hmm.
But it's a process of having a conversation with someone using questions and a specific methodology. So, questions that are asked in a certain order and in a certain way, so that you allow the person to think for herself or himself. And in that way, the person takes responsibility for their choices. They take responsibility for thinking better and coming up with their own solutions. Difference with training is huge, even though sometimes there are a lot of people that make mistakes and I mean make confusion between the two. But training is about imparting knowledge. So you have a trainer, you have someone who is an expert that is imparting knowledge, sharing what they know about a subject matter, and then the audience, the students learn from the teacher. While with coaching is different because you kind of drawing forth the wisdom and the knowledge and what the person that you're coaching already has.
Hmm.
Even though sometimes, I mean, occasionally the coach can share maybe a framework or invite the person to think about what they are experiencing in a different way by so reframing, and the person then learns through
Yeah.
that process. But it's more kind of empowering the person to come up with their own solution themselves.
Yeah, so I love it. It is a process. It means you probably need more than one session to have coaching. And secondly, I love it that you say, okay, it's um, the person has the knowledge, and you help the person think in
Yeah.
a certain way. So can you go maybe a bit deeper into how this process looks like?
Yeah, sure. And this is one of my favorite things to think about, I mean, and explain, because this process, it seems like very simple on the surface, and you can find many different methodologies. And the GROW model is a model that it's used broadly in so many organizations, very simple in just a few steps. But coaching is not just about kind of following some easy steps. It's more the way that you ask those questions and you make space for the person to think.
Mhm.
And one thing that I notice, for example, with my clients all the time, that they come to me when we have conversations, they tell me, oh, finally, I have some time to reflect on my business. I have some time to reflect on the challenges that I have with you and think through those challenges in a way that helps me to find clarity. So, one very important benefit of coaching is that helps leaders to find clarity and, as a consequence, make better decisions. Because when you find clarity, then you see more options that you could see initially, and then you are enable then to
Mhm.
make better decisions as a result. And this is extremely important for leaders, especially founders, but people also in the tech sector, because leaders go very fast and they have so much on their plate. And they think maybe that their decision making process is solid and they are considering all the elements to make really good quality decisions. But in most instances, this is not the truth.
Yeah, yeah. And that's a good point to what I wanted to come to is actually the value of coaching. Because there are many people out there that probably think coaching, there's not really value for this. As you just said, you can reflect, but at the same time, we don't have time for this. So how
Mm.
how do you demonstrate, or actually, first of all, what is the value of coaching, and how do you demonstrate it to somebody that coaching is necessary?
Yeah, so that's a very important point. So one big excuse that leaders make, but we all make for not um, engaging in the process of coaching is that, oh, we don't have time for this. So we need to execute, we need to take action on this and that. We need to complete projects. We need to kind of run a business. We don't have
Yeah.
time for this. We don't have time to listen to questions and reflect. But this is a big mistake because when we don't take time to step back and reflect, then we don't make good quality decisions, as I was saying before. So I can make an example of somebody that I coached very recently, for example, and it's top performer, amazing leader, incredible leader in sales, extremely successful, valued by the organization, and um, this leader, of course, on the surface, didn't need any coaching at all. This person is already achieving the best possible results for his team. So why does this person would need to work with a coach?
Yeah.
And what he found as the biggest benefit of coaching with me was that he didn't have the time. Exactly, was actually not taking the time for himself to reflect, because he was working on a big project and he wanted to make some changes. So change management was an important topic for him because he wanted to influence some other stakeholders in the business to work with him to change the way that the team was handling their day to day. So taking some time to do some other tasks in a different way. So I'm not going into specific because it's really not important.
No worries.
But for him, it was critical to take some time to reflect with me and to coach with me to go through his influencing process and really understanding what his communication needed to be in order to influence the stakeholders. And that's why it was a good investment because he thought initially that, oh, well, maybe I just need to just get into the action. But if without that reflection and thinking through the decision, he would have never been so incredibly successful at influencing the people that needed to be influenced. And then, good decisions were made as a result.
Yeah. Yeah, sounds good. And so, um, once people see that coaching is needed and they will start a mission, how do you start and at what point do you start? I mean, in the sense, what point do you go back many years as in a kind of a therapy, or I mean, what is the good starting point and to come with a
Mm.
certain outcome?
Yeah, that's a very important question because many people make this distinction not clear for themselves between, so what is therapy, what is counseling, what is coaching, what is mentoring, and each one of these modalities have their own scope and goals, but they are
Hmm.
all very different. So with coaching, we don't do therapy, so they are two very different things. So we don't go back into the past and think about, the childhood and traumas and things that might have kind of influenced the person to behave in a certain way, but we focus mostly on the future and the goals that the person has set for themselves. Coaching is future focused, and it's something that, I mean, all people that go through coaching training learn. Coaching is focused on achieving something in the future.
Yeah.
At the same time, it might happen that we reflect on some, thought patterns that we acquired a long time ago, and we develop more self-awareness. So one of the biggest benefits of coaching is that it helps come to the surface those patterns, those beliefs, those old emotions that become that glass ceiling
Yeah.
that make for us really difficult and sometimes impossible to achieve a higher level of success and effectiveness
Yeah.
as leaders,
For
but also
example,
as human beings.
yeah, so you have a type of limited thinking that keeps you, as you said, under that glass ceiling. And then you
Mhm.
help breaking through that glass ceiling by looking at things in a different way or defining action points.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is exactly how it works.
Yeah. And can you maybe give some anonymous examples of dramatic results that you saw somebody who wasn't living in a certain way or working in a certain way, and by gaining those insights that there are some dramatic impacts?
There are a lot of examples to think about, and so I'm just trying to pick what sparks most my interest and my curiosity in this moment. Um, Biggest examples, but this is not just one person; it's probably more than one.
Hmm.
Is when leaders are struggling with confidence, and they have that kind of imposter syndrome, and they think that they are not, good enough for the job, and that helps a lot with leaders that are stepping into a new role. Maybe they are promoted. So it happened to me multiple times to coach leaders that were kind of promoted maybe into a senior leadership role. So from being leaders of individual contributors, they stepped into a role of managing managers, and they started maybe to question themselves and thinking, oh, now that I'm managing managers, probably I'm not equipped to do this job really well. I don't know what is different from managing individual contributors. And one of the main the obstacles to that, and it happened to me with more than one client, that's why I'm not making one specific example, was self-confidence. Really have confidence within yourself that you know how to do this. It's
Hmm.
just a matter of applying what you've learned, the lessons you applied before, to this new context. And this is how coaching, helps to become more effective very quickly in a role. So coaching acts like an accelerator, because someone start to kind of explore maybe previous situations where they were, able to do the job really well, be successful, or help develop people on their team, and they can use and transfer those skills and those experiences to the current situation. Just then kind of dial up those skills maybe, and learn how to apply them to the specific context. So one thing that coaching helps with is to reconnect with your strength, reconnect with your skills, can remind you how powerful, how skillful you really are already. So you don't need to kind of reinvent yourself completely when you get promoted or you
Yeah.
step into a new role. You need to reactivate
Yeah.
those resources and those skills, and then learn, of course, something new. So to apply them to new context and new people.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you start with somebody, so after how many sessions or months or weeks can they start seeing or feeling results?
Oh, that's another great question. So my program, so generally the way I work with people is in a program of 6 months, and I have 6 sessions. And you might expect then results come after a number of sessions, but that's not true. So sometimes I had results in the first session, because the first session generally is the one where we start talking about the coaching goals. So someone come to me and says, oh, I want to work on my communication skills, or I want to work on this important project and come up with ideas on how I can influence stakeholders, like in the example that I was making before. Or someone says, oh, I don't feel really confident in this role. So what are the skills that I need to develop to be successful? So we talk about the goal, and we go from the very first session a little deeper into what the goal really means for the person, why it's important, and what is the gap. So we start understanding better. So where you're at right now, what's your reality versus where you want to become. So where you want to be and who you want to become in the process. And what happens all the time, or most of the times, is that the person I'm working with makes this big realization that actually that goal that they want to accomplish, maybe being able to present to an executive audience, is not exactly what they are looking for. So what they really want, it's that, but what they need is to develop that confidence, that's those skills, and that understanding of what it takes to get there. So that's why sometimes big realizations can happen in the very first session, or in the second session at the very beginning. And then the following sessions are more about the application. So more getting into the practice and taking on challenges so that you can over and over become, excellent and develop that skills up to make it really your own and master it.
Yeah. And this also made me think about there are hundreds of thousands of coaches out there. So how do you know which type of coach to take? And then among all that segment, how to find the right coach for you?
You ask amazing questions.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so that's a bit of a challenge, I think, for people, because when you look outside, as you said, there are, thousands of coaches, and it's really hard to pick one. And I would start with first looking at the level of experience and qualifications that the person has, because there are so many courses that promise to make you an amazing coach in a couple of days.
Yeah.
And so there are a lot of people that are not really qualified to do this job really well. And there are also many that are out there that have acquired coaching skills throughout their careers, and they are kind of pretty good, but you want the best. So at least if you're a leader that is ambitious and you want to achieve amazing results, then you want the best for yourself. This is what I would do for myself and what I've done. So when I was looking for a coach for myself, I was looking at the best. So I would look at their qualifications, but also examples of them in action. So I would ask them to coach you. Maybe just try and have a session with them, half an hour. You want to have the experience of what it means to work with that person, so that you can feel that chemistry, you can feel that it's good to work with that person and you want to see them again and again. So you need to have that chemistry. And I would also expect from the very first session to have at least one insight, one small thing that you couldn't see before having that conversation. Small doesn't have to be revolutionary necessarily, but if someone is really good, is able to give you, even in the first conversation, something that you can immediately apply.
Yeah, yeah. And I like that you say chemistry, because it has to do with building trust, going open, sharing stuff,
Yeah,
while at the same time then working with this certain outcome. It's more than just a nice conversation.
yeah.
And in my experience, there are coaches out there that limit a coaching session to a nice experience. So I really like the way
Mm.
you working with models, working with frameworks, homework, that you really literally all working on an outcome together. So do you how do you work, or how do most coaches, let me rephrase it, how do you work, in the sense of, do you have a fixed framework in it for a certain situation, or do you have a library of models and frameworks where you pick out a specific model for a specific individual?
Yeah. The way I work is using the Marshall Goldsmith methodology mostly. I don't know if your audience is familiar with that, maybe
No.
not. I mean, Marshall Goldsmith is one of the most well-known executive coaches in the world, and he developed this methodology that has a lot of accountability built into it.
Mm-hmm.
And the accountability is what helps the person to um, have support throughout the process, so they don't feel alone going through the sessions and going through this experience. At least when I'm working within organizations, I ask, for example, my coaching client to indicate some people that they think will have a useful perspective on their work, and they will be able to provide feedback and give some ideas on how the person can achieve their goals. Faster. And those people are involved then in the process. So, for example, if it's a leader, will be the direct team. So there will be the direct reports of this person. Could be also somebody else that they are working with within the business, and their direct manager. So the coaching client in that way has a lot of perspective, a lot of food for thought, so they can
Mm-hmm.
integrate those ideas into their work, and they can also receive from the person, from some of the people that they have indicated, maybe from their manager, but also from somebody else. They can also receive some coaching from them throughout throughout the process, and that's something that helps so much to make the coaching engagement very effective, because you're not doing this all by yourself. You just
Yeah.
don't have me as your coach. You have a system all around you. You have a network of people that you can count on, and they can help you to make progress faster towards your goal.
Okay, okay. Sounds really good. So, and I like it that you work with one, well, system or framework, and that you can build accountability around this. And maybe what's the name of the framework? Martian or
Marshall Goldsmith. So
Martian
Marshall
goals?
Goldsmith is an executive coach and a thought leader in the leadership development space. You can find him on LinkedIn. You can find him everywhere. He wrote so many books. And one great book that I recommend is What Got You Here Won't Get You There, which is a book that talks about that glass ceiling that I was talking
Yeah.
about before. So, very successful people, top performers, many times find themselves then stuck at a certain point in their careers, because there are blind spots that they
Mhm.
cannot see of themselves. And that's why coaching becomes, paramount then for their development and future success.
Okay, great. Sounds good. For I have one more question for this session. So, what are maybe the top three lessons that you have learned while coaching, and maybe as tips that you can give to the audience?
Okay, three lessons. I haven't thought about it. Maybe the first thing could be self-awareness,
Hmm.
and the fact that self-awareness, it's a never-ending, I would say also exciting journey. So at least for me, so we keep growing and evolving, and we never stop learning about ourselves. So, for example, I can make an example of myself. So I've been doing kind of personal development work and worked on my own self-awareness for 20 plus years, because I'm very passionate about it, and still I find always something new that I discover about myself. So a few weeks ago, for example, I was in a supervision session with my coaching supervisor, because good coaches have supervision, so they can constantly improve what they do and become better and better in their in in their profession. And I've found out something about myself that I didn't realize. So I came to the session and say, okay, this is my goal. This is what I want to work on. This is what I want to accomplish by the end of this supervision session. And then I accomplished it in 5 minutes because the supervisor asked me, okay, so you want to be able to communicate this to your clients and just try to say it now. So I was able to say it straight away in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So that wasn't the goal. Actually, what I needed, what it was reflecting on something else, was about my feelings, my sense of kind of responsibility towards my clients. And what I felt was something that I had to do, but I wasn't ready to do. So it was completely different.
Yeah.
So you see, even after so many years of working on my own self-awareness, there was something new that I couldn't see. That was my blind spot in that
Yeah.
moment. So
Yeah.
this is, I mean, huge lesson. Never stop growing, evolving, and learning about yourself. The other lesson is about potential. That's
Mhm.
kind of connected to this one.
I
Um,
love it. Potential.
Potential is always growing and ever expanding. Uh, we don't know what we are capable of until we are faced with challenges.
Hmm.
When we are faced with challenges, then we find that we have those resources maybe hiding within ourselves. So it happened to me, for example, in life, to be faced with big crisis, with the kind of job transition, for example, from before Google to Indeed. And it was through that challenge, through that transition, that I found out that were some areas where I could grow more, that I had to become more courageous, that I was able to take some risks that I thought that I wasn't able to take those risks. And I learned about myself that I was worrying, I mean, excessively about the situation. Actually, I had within myself the potential, that power to go through that situation and in the end find what I was looking for. So be curious. So that's the advice that I would give to everyone. Keep being curious about your potential, because you never know what you're capable of, and it's always much more than you think.
Yeah, true. I love it. Yeah, great. And number three.
Number three. What is number three? Uh, the number three is learn to love failure. And probably your audience already has some degree of love with towards failure, because it's through failing, it's through going through big challenges and sometimes really hurting inside and having those setbacks that we grow the most. When I look back
Mhm.
at the most challenging times of my life, are those are moments that I really cherish. And I love sometimes to think back and say, wow, I suffered so much going through that, but I also learned so much. So I
Mhm.
wonder if I can create another challenge for myself in the future so that I can learn more. So I am a learner, so I'm always looking for any opportunity to learn. And there's nothing better than the challenge or setback or big failure to learn as much as you can. So
Yeah.
don't be afraid of failing, embrace it, and enjoy it.
Yeah, and when you start maybe to recognize patterns of when you fail and if there's something consistent behind it, I think that's a very important lesson that you can
Mhm.
learn from and maybe only recognize through coaching sessions.
Yeah, absolutely. And then when you expand your awareness at that point through the learning that comes from a challenge, you will never go back.
Yeah.
You will never go back.
Mm.
So now, for example, I'm going through in a challenging time, and I've learned some lessons through that career transition from Google to Indeed that I'm applying right now. So that over, for example, thinking and worrying so much that I had experienced at that time, I'm not doing this now, even though
Mhm.
I'm facing a challenge. So I'm not doing the same thing, because I learned to self-manage and be a lot more conscious about how I use my attention, my energy. So that happened through that challenge and working with coaches uh, and learning this
Yeah.
uh, and this lesson and how to apply it again and again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Great. Thank you very much, Linda. That was a very good first session. I'm looking forward to talking to you in the next sessions.
Thank you, Cedric. Really enjoyed it.
Have a nice day. Bye bye.
Bye.